Have you ever noticed how some people can walk into a room and instantly command respect without saying a single word? They don't shout, they don't beg for attention, and they don't try to prove themselves with endless talking. Yet somehow, the atmosphere changes. People turn their heads, conversations soften, and eyes are drawn toward them. Now compare that to your own experience. How many times have you spoken louder, explained yourself more, tried harder to be heard, only to feel ignored, overlooked, or dismissed? This is one of the greatest paradoxes of human interaction. Society tells us that respect is earned by being loud, assertive, and constantly proving our worth. But the truth, as Niccolò Machiavelli revealed centuries ago, is the exact opposite. Power and respect often belong to those who understand the silent game, the art of presence, restraint, and control. Think about it. Why do you feel uneasy in front of someone who remains calm while you get agitated? Why does silence feel heavier than words in the middle of an argument? It's because silence exposes the weakness of others while highlighting your own strength. Machiavelli knew that the ability to hold power without speaking is one of the most effective tools of influence. It forces others to confront their own insecurities, their own need to fill the silence, while you stand immovable, untouchable. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people will never master this. They are prisoners of their need for approval, addicted to constant talking, explaining, and defending. But once you learn how to command respect without saying a word, you will no longer beg for recognition. Respect will come to you naturally because people cannot ignore what they cannot control. Before we dive deeper into this journey of silent power and Machiavellian wisdom, I want you to take one quick step. If you find this message resonating with you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll all be the very first to receive the next powerful lesson I release, insights that could change not only how people see you, but how you see yourself. Respect. Everyone wants it, but very few know how to truly command it. Think back to your own life for a moment. Maybe it was in a classroom, maybe at work, maybe even among friends. There was that one person, the loudest in the room, always talking, always trying to dominate. And then, there was someone else, quiet, reserved, barely speaking. Yet when they did walk in, when they sat down, people noticed. Their silence carried more weight than the loudest voices around them, and you couldn't help but wonder, why? We live in a culture, especially here in America, that teaches us to equate talking with strength. From childhood, you're told to speak up, to stand your ground, to say what's on your mind. Debate teams reward quick comebacks. Workplaces reward those who self-promote, and social media glorifies the ones who never stop talking. Silence, on the other hand, is often mistaken for weakness, for shyness, for passivity. But let me ask you this. If silence is weakness, why do the most powerful leaders in history know how to use it as a weapon? Niccolò Machiavelli, the infamous political thinker of the Renaissance, understood this paradox better than anyone. In his book, The Prince, he described how true power doesn't always come from action, but from the perception of power. People respect what they cannot easily predict or control, and nothing is harder to control than silence. A person who doesn't react immediately, who doesn't rush to fill every empty space with words, unsettles those around them. They become a mystery, and mystery always demands attention. Carl Jung, one of the fathers of modern psychology, gave us another key insight. He said that people project their inner world onto others. That means when you remain silent, people project their fears, their doubts, and their desires onto you. Your silence becomes a mirror, and they begin to see themselves more than they see you. That is why you gain power, because you stop playing their game and force them to face their own reflection. But most of us never get there. Why? Because silence is uncomfortable. It demands self-control. It requires you to sit with your own insecurity instead of running from it. We feel naked without words to cover us. So we speak too much, we justify, we defend, we explain. We keep handing our power away, hoping others will finally see us, respect us, and value us. And yet, the more we talk, the less we are heard. Think about arguments. When you try to prove yourself endlessly, what happens? The other person tunes you out. But the moment you stop responding, when you look them in the eye and remain calm, they begin to falter. They stumble over their words. They raise their voice. They feel the silence pressing on them, and suddenly the power dynamic shifts. You didn't win by force. You won by not playing. This is where modern life traps us. In the workplace, people think respect comes from titles or constant networking. In relationships, people think love and value come from explaining themselves, justifying their actions, or talking their way into being understood. On social media, people shout louder and louder into the void, hoping likes and shares will validate their existence. But none of this creates true respect. At best, it creates attention. At worst, it exposes desperation. Respect isn't given to the loudest voice. It's given to the rare presence that doesn't need to shout. Machiavelli would say that if you want to command respect, you must first learn how to control perception. And perception is shaped not only by what you do, but by what you refuse to do. By the silence you can hold, by the emotions you can master, by the moment you don't react. So here is the painful truth. The reason most people will never command respect is not because they lack intelligence, beauty, or success. It's because they lack control. They are ruled by impulse. They can't stand silence. They need to defend themselves at the first sign of judgment, to explain themselves at the first misunderstanding, to prove themselves at the first challenge. But every time you rush to prove yourself, you hand away your power. You show the world that you are not in control of yourself. And if you can control yourself, why should anyone respect you? Machiavelli knew this, Jung knew this, and even Friedrich Nietzsche understood it. Nietzsche wrote that the most powerful man is he who is most alone, not because solitude is glamorous, but because the one who can stand in silence, who does not need the constant approval of the herd, becomes untouchable. The question is, will you continue being one of those who beg for respect through endless words, or will you learn the art of commanding it without saying a single one? Because once you see how respect truly works, you'll never play the same game again. Let's strip this down to reality. It's easy to talk about Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche as if they lived in a distant world of theory. But their ideas come alive in everyday life, your office, your relationships, your community, even in politics. To understand how silence commands respect, you don't need to read The Prince from cover to cover. You only need to look around. Think about the workplace. You've probably had a boss or a manager who rarely raised their voice, rarely explained every decision, rarely wasted words in long-winded speeches. And yet, when they walked into the room, everything shifted. People straightened up. Meetings suddenly became serious. Even the chatter stopped. Why? Because their silence wasn't empty, it carried authority. They didn't rush to justify themselves. They didn't beg to be liked. They let their presence speak louder than words. Now compare that to the boss who talks too much. The one who tries to prove they are in charge by over-explaining, micromanaging, or constantly reminding everyone of their position. At first, you may listen out of obligation, but eventually, their words lose weight. You tune them out. Respect doesn't grow louder with repetition, it fades. The talkative leader becomes predictable, and predictability kills authority. This isn't just about leadership in the workplace. It happens in personal relationships too. Think about arguments with friends, partners, or family. How often do those arguments spiral into endless back and forths, both sides trying to win with words? And how often do those words solve nothing? Now imagine someone who, instead of shouting louder, simply pauses. They look you in the eye, remain calm, and let the silence linger. That silence creates discomfort, not because it's empty, but because it forces you to feel. Suddenly, you replay your own words, you question your own behavior, you sense the power has shifted. Without saying a word, the silent one has taken control of the conversation. American culture offers us striking examples of this dynamic. Look at politics. The most respected leaders aren't necessarily the loudest debaters or the most aggressive speakers. They're the ones who know how to use silence strategically. Abraham Lincoln was famous for listening more than speaking, often pausing before responding, and allowing others to reveal themselves while he preserved his composure. His silence was never weakness. It was power in its purest form. Or consider the world of business. Steve Jobs was known for moments of long silence during meetings. Some employees described it as terrifying. He would simply stare, waiting. That silence forced people to question themselves, to rise to the occasion, to respect the weight of the moment. Jobs didn't need to dominate every conversation with endless words. His silence did the work for him. Even in sports, silence speaks volumes. Think about Michael Jordan. He wasn't the loudest trash talker on the court. In fact, he often said less than others. But his stare, his quiet confidence, his refusal to be rattled, that was enough to break opponents long before the buzzer. His silence was not absence. It was dominance. And on a smaller, more personal level, you've seen this in social groups. There's always that one person who doesn't fight for attention, doesn't try to outtalk everyone, and yet somehow, people notice them more. Maybe it's the way they listen. Maybe it's the way they hold eye contact without flinching. Maybe it's the way they don't rush to fill the silence with nervous chatter. That restraint makes others lean in. It creates intrigue. And intrigue is the root of respect. Machiavelli would say that silence is a tool of perception. People respect not just what they understand, but what they cannot easily define. When you talk too much, you reveal too much. When you remain silent, you remain unpredictable. And unpredictability creates power. The question isn't whether silence works, it does. The question is whether you can master it. Because in a world where everyone is addicted to noise, the one who chooses silence becomes unforgettable. Respect doesn't need to be shouted. Sometimes the loudest authority is the one that never raises its voice at all. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is a deliberate act of power. To understand why silence commands respect, we have to go deeper than examples. We need to step into the psychology of human behavior and the philosophy of power. This is where Machiavelli's insights merge with the timeless truths of thinkers like Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche. Let's start with Machiavelli. In The Prince, he argued that rulers must carefully manage appearances. Power is not only about what you do, it is about what others believe you are capable of doing. This is why silence is so effective. When you remain silent, you don't reveal your hand. People project their own fears and expectations onto you. They assume you know more than you reveal, that you are stronger than you appear, that you hold secrets they can't access. In this way, silence amplifies your presence because it invites imagination. And imagination, Machiavelli would say, is often stronger than reality. Carl Jung helps us understand this from another angle. He said that what we do not confront within ourselves will appear outside as fate. When you remain calm and silent, you are not just controlling others, you are controlling yourself. You refuse to be hijacked by ego, fear, or insecurity. You resist the impulse to justify, to defend, to prove. And this self-mastery is what people recognize as authority. Jung believed that the unconscious mind drives much of human behavior. Silence disrupts this automatic cycle. It forces people to face themselves in your presence, while you remain grounded in your own center. Now let's bring Nietzsche into the conversation. Nietzsche wrote that, "You need chaos in your soul to give birth to a dancing star." What does this mean in the context of respect? It means that strength is not about avoiding conflict or discomfort. It is about standing unshaken in the midst of it. Silence is a battlefield. When tension rises, when emotions flare, Silence is the ability to remain still while others unravel. It is not passivity, it is active dominance. Nietzsche believed that true strength lies in transcending the herd, refusing to be swept up by collective noise. Silence is the clearest mark of someone who no longer seeks approval from the crowd. Modern psychology supports this. Research in communication shows that people who pause before responding are perceived as more intelligent, more confident, and more trustworthy. Silence slows down the pace of interaction. It destabilizes those who expect quick answers. It signals that you are not reactive but deliberate. And in a world full of impulsive voices, deliberation is rare and therefore respected. But let's push even deeper. Why does silence unsettle people so much? Because silence creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. When you fall silent, others rush to fill the space with their words, their emotions, their projections. They reveal more than they intended. They lose control while you gain it. This is the psychological inversion of power. By doing nothing, you force others to do too much. This is why silence is not weakness. It is a conscious act of dominance. To remain silent when others expect noise is to demonstrate control over the most difficult battlefield of all, yourself. Machiavelli would argue that those who cannot control themselves can never control others. Jung would add that self-control means integrating your unconscious shadows rather than being enslaved by them. Nietzsche would insist that only those who no longer need to prove themselves are truly free. And yet, most people fail at this. They confuse silence with submission. They fear that if they don't explain, they will be misunderstood. If they don't defend themselves, they will be disrespected. If they don't speak, they will disappear. But this fear is an illusion. The truth is the opposite. The more you try to justify yourself, the more invisible you become. The more you try to prove your worth with words, the less people listen. Here lies the paradox. Silence feels like loss of control, but in reality, it is the ultimate expression of control. Those who master silence don't need to convince. They don't need to beg. They don't need to chase. Their very presence demands recognition. And the reason is simple. Respect follows mystery. People cannot respect what they fully understand and can easily predict. But they will always respect what they cannot quite grasp. Machiavelli's lesson, then, is clear. Stop wasting power on needless words. Use silence as a strategy. Let others reveal themselves while you hold your ground. Let them drown in their noise while you stand in calm authority. Because in the end, the one who speaks less often has more to say, and the one who can command without words will always command with greater force. Silence is power, but only if you know how to use it. Many people hear this and think, so I should just stop talking? That's not the point. Silence without awareness can look like weakness, but silence with intention becomes magnetic. The question is, how do you transform silence from emptiness into authority? How do you practice the Machiavellian art of commanding respect without saying a word? The first step is self-mastery. You cannot command others if you cannot first command yourself. Think of every time you've reacted impulsively, snapping back in anger, rushing to explain yourself, nervously filling the air with words because silence felt unbearable. Each of those moments was a surrender. You handed your power over to the situation. To change this, you must practice restraint. Restraint is not suppression, it is awareness. It's the difference between being dragged by your emotions and standing in control of them. Carl Jung would call this individuation, the process of integrating all parts of yourself, the confident and the insecure, the calm and the angry, into one unified whole. When you are integrated, silence doesn't frighten you, it becomes a tool. You don't rush to justify yourself because you no longer need external approval to validate your existence. You don't feel compelled to argue because you trust your own perspective. You no longer react just because someone provokes you. And this composure is exactly what others read as strength. The second step is body language. Machiavelli emphasized the importance of appearances. Words are fleeting, but presence lingers. When you enter a room, people read you before you ever speak. If you slump your shoulders, avoid eye contact, or fidget nervously, your silence communicates insecurity. But if you stand tall, breathe steadily, and hold someone's gaze without flinching, your silence communicates authority. You don't need to talk to make people listen. You only need to embody stillness. Third, learn the art of strategic silence. Not every silence is equal. Silence can be avoidance, or it can be dominance. Strategic silence is used at key moments, during arguments when you refuse to be dragged into pointless battles, in negotiations when you let the other side speak too much and reveal their position, in relationships when you withhold immediate reactions and create space for others to reflect on their own behavior. These silences are not about withdrawal, they are about control. They are chosen moments that shift the balance of power. Fourth, detach from the need for validation. Respect cannot be begged for. The more you chase it, the more it runs. Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely on being loved, but to focus on being respected. In daily life, this means you must give up the addiction to approval. Don't speak to be liked. Don't argue to be right. Don't explain yourself to be accepted. When you stop needing external validation, your silence becomes powerful because it no longer hides insecurity, it radiates freedom. Finally, embrace the discomfort of silence. At first, it will feel unbearable. You'll want to fill the space, to soften the tension, to escape the unease. But remember this, tension is where transformation happens. Every second you hold silence instead of rushing to speak is a second you reclaim your power. Nietzsche believed that suffering was not a mistake, but a catalyst for greatness. The discomfort of silence is your suffering. Endure it, and it transforms you. Avoid it, and you remain enslaved to your impulses. So here is your awakening. Silence is not passive. It is active, deliberate, and chosen. It is the refusal to waste your energy on proving yourself. It is the courage to stand in the presence rather than the noise. It is the weapon of those who understand that words are cheap, but presence is priceless. Imagine yourself tomorrow. You walk into a room. You don't rush to speak. You don't fight to be seen. You simply exist calm, composed, unshaken. People notice. They feel it. Some grow uneasy, others grow curious. Without saying a word, you've shifted the atmosphere. This is not fantasy. This is a skill. And like all skills, it can be practiced. Machiavelli would tell you, control perception. Jung would tell you, master your unconscious. Nietzsche would tell you, transcend the herd. Together, they would agree. Silence is not emptiness. It is the voice of authority. And when you learn to use it, you no longer ask for respect, you command it. Respect is not something you beg for. It is not something you earn by shouting louder, by proving yourself over and over, or by constantly explaining who you are. Respect is commanded, not with endless words, but with presence, with restraint, with silence. This is the lesson Machiavelli understood centuries ago, and it remains more relevant than ever in our noisy, overstimulated world. Look around at society today. Everyone is talking. Everyone is posting. Everyone is trying desperately to be heard. But the louder the world gets, the less people listen. In this chaos, those who master silence become unforgettable. They are not lost in the crowd. They rise above it not by force, but by stillness. They are the ones who walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a single word. And that could be you. You don't need to change your voice, your appearance, or your background. You need to change your relationship with silence. Instead of fearing it, embrace it. Instead of running from it, wield it. Silence is not weakness. It is the mark of someone who has nothing to prove. And when you reach that place, people will respect you not because you asked for it, but because they cannot help themselves. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Every time you rush to speak out of fear, insecurity, or ego, that is your unconscious controlling you. But the moment you can sit in silence, calm, aware, present, you take control of yourself. And when you control yourself, you command the respect of others. Nietzsche would remind us that true strength is not in following the herd, but in transcending it. The herd shouts, argues, and explains. The strong one does not need to. The strong one lets silence speak. So as we close, I want you to imagine this. The next time someone challenges you, instead of explaining yourself, you pause. The next time someone disrespects you, instead of arguing, you remain calm. The next time you walk into a room, you don't announce yourself, you let your presence announce you. That is how respect is commanded. Not by noise, but by silence. The time has come to stop giving away your power with words. The time has come to embody presence, to practice restraint, to let silence do the talking. Once you understand this, you will never chase respect again, because it will already belong to you. If this message spoke to you, if you felt the shift inside yourself while listening, then don't let it end here. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next awakening lesson. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, what part of today's message hit you the hardest? Which insight will you carry into your own life? Because remember, transformation doesn't begin with noise. It begins with awareness. And that journey starts now with you.